My name is Ethan. I grew up in a small mountain village where my mother taught me from childhood that every living creature is God's creation, and that a person will answer for every drop of blood they spill. Back then, I believed her. I prayed before sleep, looked at the mountains, and thought that up there, beyond the snowy peaks, God was especially close. But adult life turned out to be harsher than childhood stories. We didn't have enough money, debts were growing, my family needed bread, and I saw that the quickest gold in our region was not in the ground but in animal skins. Over time, I became a hunter, then a famous hunter. People brought me money for trophies, for the heads of predators, for skins they used to decorate their homes. I got used to seeing animals not as someone's creations, but as merchandise. Every new order pushed me further away from the childlike faith where my mother had taught me to respect life. Sometimes late at night when I was alone, a quiet voice of conscience rose up inside me. But I drowned it out with the thought, the world is cruel. I'm just playing by its rules. The only image that never completely let me go was my mother's voice reading words about how God sees even a little bird fall. That year, the winter was mild. There wasn't much snow. The paths were almost bare. Slopes were partly brown and gray with rock. It wasn't a hungry, harsh winter when people go into the mountains for a last chance to survive. On the contrary, even with the little we had, we could have made it to spring. And that makes it especially painful to admit. I went to hunt, not because there was no other way, but because I had grown used to choosing money and glory, even when life itself was not on the edge. One day, a man came to me who changed everything, a rich client. He wore expensive clothes and a watch that made numbers spin in my head. He wasn't interested in meat or food. He wanted a prize. He said, "I need a snow leopard." A rare animal, almost a legend. He named a sum that could wipe out all my debts, help my family, and, as I thought then, finally let me live in peace. I understood that this was the deal I had dreamed of for many years. When something inside quietly whispered, "Don't do this," I deliberately pushed that whisper away. I told myself that faith is a luxury for those who don't have to think about money. I accepted the order. I packed my gear, checked my rifle, maps, and cameras. At dawn, I headed into the mountains. The mild winter made the path deceptively easy. Snow lay in a thin, soft layer, and in many places bare earth and rocks crunched under my boots. The sky was bright, the wind not as fierce as in other years. Everything around seemed to say, this is not a season of desperate struggle for survival. But I walked forward like a man who had invented this necessity for himself. I had already walked these trails before, with my father, just to watch animals. Back then, when my mother saw us off, she asked, "Don't shoot predators unless you must. They belong to God too." I believed her then. Now I walked over the same stones as someone who had come into a gentle winter, with a hard intention to kill a creature that threatened no one. Days passed, one after another. I read the thin stripes of snow like an open book. I saw paw prints, clumps of fur, leftover prey. Where there used to be deep drifts, I now saw gray rocks, roots, and dark earth. At night I sat by a small fire, and even the fire seemed unnecessary. The cold was not as bitter as usual. The wind was softer. But for some reason that year its sound reminded me more than ever of the childhood prayers I once repeated after my mother. I pushed those thoughts away, fed the fire with more wood to drown whatever was waking up inside. I told myself this was just a hunt, just another contract, just another animal. One day I saw him for the first time, a silhouette on a pale, partially exposed slope. The snow leopard moved quietly, almost unreal, like part of the snow and rock at the same time. His body slid across the stones as if he was the owner of this world, and I was only a passing guest. The mild winter made him stand out even more, white fur with spots against a grayish-brown background. In that moment, a strange thought flashed through me. I wasn't a hunter. I was an intruder. I had stepped into a place not made for gunshots, but I pushed this feeling away again. I reminded myself of the money, the debts, the fact that this was my chance. I set up an ambush, cameras, scope, a hide. Toward evening, as the light faded, the snow leopard appeared again, closer than before. I could see every movement of the muscles under his fur, saw his paws touch the thin snow and bare rock. I raised the rifle to my shoulder and held my breath. Through the scope, I caught his eye. In that gaze, there was no hatred, no fear. There was weariness, strength, and an ancient kind of wisdom. Suddenly, my mother's words surfaced. God is looking through the eyes of those you are about to hurt. I tried to push that memory away, but my finger on the trigger trembled. I still fired. Not the way I planned, not perfectly. The snow leopard jerked, slipped off the slope, and vanished among stones and patches of snow. White mixed with gray and brown turned spotted red. The thin layer of snow quickly soaked up the blood. I expected the usual rush of adrenaline and triumph that always came after a successful shot. But instead, a cold emptiness opened in my chest. The sky darkened, and the wind rose sharply, as if the weather itself wanted to remind me that a mild winter was no excuse for a hard heart. I followed the blood trail, and felt that every step on that thin snow was like stepping through my own soul. On the way, scenes from past hunts caught up with me. Animal bodies left in the snow, satisfied faces of clients, stacks of money on the table. Suddenly, all of it seemed empty and filthy. The closer I came to where the wounded snow leopard should be, the stronger the feeling grew that if I put the final point here, I would lose not only the animal but what little human was left in me. I didn't know what to call it back then, but now I understand. I wasn't guided only by tracks of blood. God was leading me to an edge. And then I found him. The snow leopard lay by a rock, his chest rising and falling heavily, the sparse snow around him stained with his blood. And in some places it simply ran down bare stone. He was still incredibly beautiful, even in pain. His eyes were open and looking straight at me. They didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't squeeze shut in fear. I stopped a few steps away. Something inside me broke. My legs went weak, and I dropped to my knees. My name is Ethan, but in that moment I felt like a little boy again, standing before my mother and listening to her stories about God. I looked into the snow leopard's eyes and for the first time in my life, spoke to him as a living witness of my soul. I said, "Snow leopard, forgive me. I came here to kill you for money and glory.
Please don't go.
I knew this winter was mild,
So sorry.
that we weren't starving, that you were no threat to anyone. I knew you are part of these mountains." And I still pulled the trigger. My voice shook. My eyes burned with tears, and I couldn't remember the last time I had cried. I set the rifle down on the ground as if it were a filthy tool I wanted to push away. I folded my hands and whispered, "God, if you can still hear me, I don't deserve your answer or his forgiveness. But if there is anything alive left inside me, don't let me finish him now, when he never did anything to me. The words came on their own. I spoke to the snow leopard. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to forgive me. But I'm asking you, let me at least try to fix what I've done. I knelt in front of a wounded animal I had so recently seen only as a target. The snow leopard could have growled, struck with his paw, tried to get up and attack. But he simply watched. In that gaze was a silent test. I slowly reached toward him with open hands, showing I would not cause more pain. He didn't pull away. I saw the wound and realized it could be bandaged. With shaking hands, I took out bandages and a knife, carefully cut the clotted fur and cleaned the blood. Every time I touched him, I whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry," not knowing whether I was speaking to him or to God. When I finished the bandage, I moved back, still on my knees. I left food and water nearby and stepped even farther away, giving him the freedom to choose. For a while, the snow leopard lay motionless. Then he slowly stood up. He looked at me one last time, holding my gaze a moment longer than necessary, turned, and walked away into the thin snow and patches of stone. I remained there, on my knees, with tears in my eyes and empty hands, but with the sense that for the first time in many years, I had done something truly right. I returned to the village without a trophy. The client greeted me with fury. He yelled that I was weak, that I got scared, that faith turns people into losers. He threatened me, demanded his money back, promised to ruin my reputation. I listened and understood that not long ago his words would have crushed me. But now, after kneeling before a wounded snow leopard and begging for forgiveness in a mild, almost warm winter, human threats sounded hollow. I told him I would no longer hunt the leopard. And as I said it, I felt a strange freedom I had never known when I brought home money. Time passed. I stopped being a trophy hunter. I became a guide and an assistant to rangers who protect the mountains and to photographers who come here to see snow leopards alive, not on walls. I started praying again. But now my prayers are not requests for profit. They are gratitude for the day God stopped me before the last shot. Sometimes looking at the sparse snow and rocks under my feet, I think about that snow leopard, whether he is still alive, whether he remembers me. Sometimes I feel he is still somewhere nearby. One morning at dawn, I saw a silhouette on a mountain ridge. A snow leopard stood on the summit, looking down in my direction. Maybe it was another animal. Maybe it was him. But at that moment I understood clearly. Once I came here in a mild winter to kill a legend, and I walked away a different man. God didn't just save an animal. He used the meeting with that snow leopard to save my heart. Sometimes God stops us in the very moment when our finger is already on the trigger. If we are willing to listen and lower the weapon, it is not only the fate of the one we aim at that changes. Our own life changes too.